going to ask you to do a couple of things. I'm going to ask you to take a look at this next clip. This is Michael Gunner. He's one of the chief state ministers for the Northern Territories in Australia. I'm going to ask you to look for two things. Look at his eyes and count the number of times he blinks, and look at his face, the way that the muscles around his mouth are moving. Watch this clip, listen to what he has to say, and we'll pick up on the other side of this raving lunatic.
Do you think at all that your rhetoric around calling people anti-vaxxers, some of whom were vaccinated, has had an impact at all on vaccine take-up in parts of the territory?
No, and I'll repeat it. If you are anti-mandate, you are absolutely anti-vax. I don't care what your personal vaccination status is. If you support, champion, give a green light, give comfort to, support anybody who argues against the vaccine, you are an anti-vaxxer, absolutely. Your personal vaccination status is utterly irrelevant. If you campaign against the mandate, if you campaign against people being vaccinated in vulnerable settings, teachers in classrooms, I'll be really clear, at that point in time, people were actually supporting the idea of a teacher being unvaccinated in a remote community classroom with kids who cannot be vaccinated. I reject that, I still reject it. And if you are out there in any way, shape or form campaigning against this mandate, you are absolutely anti-vax. If you say pro-persuasion, stuff it, shove it. We are absolutely going to make sure as many Territorians as possible are vaccinated. That is our best protection against this thing. And if you look at the Doherty modelling that's only come out since, that says if you double dose 80 in remote communities, 5 and up, I think you'll see our vaccine mandate is absolutely crucial to protecting lives, particularly Aboriginal lives. And I will never back away from supporting vaccines. And anyone out there who comes for the mandate, you are anti-vax.
So that was Michael Gunner from the Northern Territories in Australia, banging on in some deeply psychotic way about the vaccine mandate. And if you don't believe in it, then absolutely you must be locked up. In the Northern Territories right now, there is a massive quarantine camp. It is surrounded by high barbed wire. It is, to all intents and purposes, a prison camp. People are being taken to that quarantine camp, 38 so far, just contacts, people who've been in contact with COVID cases, and many of them are Indigenous peoples of the Northern Territory. They have to pay for this pleasure, £2,500 for an individual for 14 days and £5,000 for a family or a couple. If they refuse to be tested in order to be released after 10 days, they have to stay a further 10 days at their own price point, at their own pocket. They have to pay to stay longer if they refuse to be tested. So effectively they're being coerced into testing, because otherwise they have to pay $3,500 to stay another 10 days in the prison camp. Also, when you think of the manner and the attitude of the man enforcing this, does it seem like reasonable or democratic behaviour? Or does it remind you of another man in another time, in another age that we all said we would never go back to? One final thing I'm going to ask you to do. Take a look at a world map. Just get a world map up on Google or on your wall. Have a look at Australia and where it's positioned globally. Have a look at the Northern Territories of Australia and where they are geographically. And have a look at the world's superpower that's bearing down on them from above. If you think this is an isolated case or a limited incidence, I'd say think again. This feels much more like a dry run to me, and Michael Gunner seems like just the kind of psychotic individual to be enforcing it. If we look to Australia, I think we look to the future the globalists would like to enforce on us all.